What are we? Yes, yes,
Hello, Rick. We're live.
we, yes. We are live. This is not a tape. This is not a recording.
Not a recording.
Yes, yes.
So, what's been going on for you this week?
Well, quickly, we've. I'll say we because it was a global effort. I finished my campaign for Movember, and it of the 6 years that I've been doing it, this is the biggest year yet. Raised 20 $2,600 plus. Um,
Nice.
yeah, no, it was one of those like I always have a thing about targets and goals, and there's always the pressure. Oh, I got to get to that kind of a thing, and there was a quote that I was kind of living by throughout the month was you know just aim for the moon, and the worst that could possibly happen is that you would land in the stars, and
It's not a
right.
bad place to land.
Not a bad place to land, and that's exactly what it is. I threw it out there, did what I needed to do, and people came forward, and like it was literally obviously a collective effort. um, and I just feel privileged and honored to be the catalyst to put it together, kind of a thing, and watch it grow, and me grow. I always learn more about me, going through the process of raising money. It just because it brings up so many different things, and there's a lot of things like letting go that you have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
What
It's
about yourself?
what about myself? So,
You do have your coffee. You have your coffee now, right?
I make coffee now.
Good.
I've had to let go of a lot today, especially. But the topic of letting go came up a lot in my week,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is, speaks to that reticular activation system, right?
Mm,
Once you focus your energy towards something, it just keeps coming up. I've literally had this conversation come up multiple times, including when I was doing like a podcast episode with
oh,
someone. Yeah.
okay.
And he asked me about this, and I was like, oh, interesting. I'm going to be talking about this on Wednesday as well. So, yeah, what did I have to let go of? Listen, I feel like when you really focus on this concept, you realize that every day is about letting go of so many things, right? From small to larger expectations, or just mostly it is expectations, right? Expectations of something going in a specific way, or someone doing something that we expect, right? It's all about expectations, right?
Mm, mm,
And that was my day. Letting go of not finding parking, letting go of being 40 minutes late for a doctor's appointment, letting go of missing my yoga class, letting go of, like just my afternoon not unfolding the way I expected it, and not being very productive today.
mm.
Letting go of like, okay, I'm feeling very tired. What can I do? I'm just going to rest for a minute before I talk to Rick. And what else can I do? I'm going to make a coffee, right? Which I don't typically drink at 4 p.m. But I was like, let it go. You need it today.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's been a little bit the theme of my week without getting really specific into the boring details of my life. But
There's
it's,
nothing boring about your life.
huh? Well, sometimes it's boring, right? I couldn't find parking in New York City on East 72nd Street. Like, who else would be angry about that? Just me, because I always find parking. And I can't really say that to many New Yorkers because parking is a thing. It's
Yes.
not easy to find in New York City, but I normally do. And today I couldn't.
Yeah.
And okay, I let it go, right? But like to just get a little bit deeper into this concept of surrender, because letting go is really surrendering, right? I'd say that it is something that comes into our lives in many shapes and forms, And
Yes.
what often scares people, this is actually a concept that is scary to some people, right? It
Yeah.
can be triggering, right?
Right.
It can be taken the wrong way, right? And it can be very abstract, right? And it can sometimes even be used as like a bypass, right?
Mm.
So I think that a really good way to really understand this concept is to start from small things, right? Where like to start from small things where you have no attachment or you have very little attachment to the outcomes, right?
Well, I mean, just like I like where you're going with that, but I mean, just the fact that we're talking about letting go. uh, For something to be let go, there has to be some sort of attachment,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Or else
Yeah.
you have nothing to let go, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so physically, it's sort of like you're hanging on to something, big, small, whatever. I mean, that's your subjective truth, right? Um, but yeah, no, I'm interested. So I'm interested in what you see as the term letting go means. Like, what does letting go
I
mean?
mean, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's letting go of an attachment, right? It's letting go of an attachment to expectations, to judgment, to, from others or yourself, to control, right? It really is a lot, it really has a lot to do with letting go of control. And very much what you have to shift towards then is trust,
Mm,
right? So you're letting go of expectations and all these other things that you normally hang on to, right? And you shift into just trusting and believing in something, that something is being taken care of, something makes sense beyond your understanding, right?
right.
And I
Yeah.
think this piece of it is the piece that makes it a little bit like abstract for people. I don't want to say woo woo because I don't believe it's woo woo, but some people may perceive it as that's woo woo, right? Like go
Well,
surrender, right?
yeah. So when I mean, so we understand what woo woo is. We're pointing towards a formless entity that doesn't really have any kind of particular structure. Some people call it, like when I say, it's a spiritual journey. Like, like when you're going inside, it's a spiritual journey. And as soon as you say the label spiritual, people go, oh, are religion and all this other kind of stuff. And I said, no, 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 no. Like, the word spirit means basically anything that does not have any form to it, right? So like, you can't, it's really difficult to describe. I mean, we make attempts to, but we're really talking about something that's kind of made up in the sense, right? And it's
Yeah.
ego based. Like, what you were pointing to when I heard all your descriptors, you were really pointing to a lot of things that are conditioned habits, our conditioned self, our ego, you know, how we expect certain things to happen, like who's expecting, right? you know, and then when you say surrender, we're surrendering to that formless energy that, and yeah, there is a bit of a trust. There's a huge amount of trust there, like
Yeah.
in the sense of, right? and and I find that it's a practice. First of all, you have to know that you're actually hanging on to something first.
I mean, which is why it makes it so tricky, right? Because it takes a certain mindset to
Oh,
even go there,
yeah.
right? To even go there, because for as long as you're hanging on and you're not seeing that you're hanging on, you can't even hear it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, like it really takes that ability to look at yourself with humility and deep honesty,
Totally.
right?
Like, yeah, yeah, you have
And,
to, it's challenging yourself, right?
and curiosity, right? Maybe I don't know everything, and really the curiosity of even giving it a try, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little abstract for me. I don't quite know what that means. Uh, how can I try? You know,
Yeah.
how can I prove to myself that this is true? And I guess it's definitely not by saying it's woo woo and it's low abstract and it's too spiritual for me, right? That's a place where perhaps you're not ready for this conversation, right? And
Well,
that's okay, right?
or even to the point of, how about letting go of that for a second?
Well, but if you're not ready to hear it, you're not ready to let go of that,
No,
right?
no. Well, but
So
that's
that's
part
such
of
a
it.
good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's part of
yeah,
it, right? Let go of what you think you know. Let
yeah,
go of the concept that you can prove everything, to be like in a tangible, that you can have proof of everything existing, and
yeah,
just play with this concept, right? Just experiment with it,
yeah,
right? Don't believe what I say. You don't have to believe all of it or go all the way with it, but you can experiment in some small way with it,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think that, not I think, I know that when you do, then those small experiments that you make add up to really helping you understand the larger
Yeah,
concept. And it's really a way of life. It's really a way of being in flow with life instead of resisting it and instead of trying to control it and like manipulate it to be in a certain way. It's a way to dance with it, right?
no, well, yes, and in some ways, I just, as you were speaking there, I just got a bit of an idea that floated, like more of a vision about, this sort of almost like like you're hanging on to what most things turn out to be is you're hanging on to something in your memory. You're hanging something usually in the past, right? Well, that's where your memory is, right? So you're hanging on to something in your memory, and and it and you feel like you want to do more, but there's this tugging. It's almost like, the more I want to do, it seems like, there's something hanging on, right? And the minute that you feel that you notice, for me, this is how, the minute I notice that I'm doing the hanging on to, it's not letting go and having it drop away. For me, it's like letting go at the other end and launching.
Hmm.
Like, I actually see, sort of like, okay, I want to do this, and if I let go, it would provide the avenue, what I to take the next step. What I find, though, is that when I let go, there's almost like a push, kind of a thing. It's sort of like, whoa,
It's just not always a push in the direction that you were trying to predict. It's not
yeah,
always a push in the way that you were trying to control it to go, right?
yeah,
It's a push in a direction that you have to trust is the right direction, right? And I love how what you just pointed to, that there's almost this like forcing something and there's this resistance, right?
yeah,
And I think that's your clue, right?
yeah,
When that resistance is there, it's just redirecting you, right?
yeah,
Instead, though, human nature tends to just fight back, right? Because we're like in survival. We fight back, we fight for our lives, right? We just want to keep on pushing and forcing, right? And that takes a lot of energy, right? It takes a lot of energy just fighting up against something that we think is the right direction, but we don't really know 100%, right?
no, no,
Versus what you're describing being pushed, right? And now you're like it's more at ease, you're getting a little help, right? And you're not spending all this energy capital in like pushing and fighting and being against something, but you're just letting it push you and remain curious to see where it's pointing you to, right? Where is it pushing me towards, right?
exactly. And hi, Ken. Ken's joined
Hey
us.
Ken, how are you?
And he's asking a question about, what would either of us suggest how to let go of a deep ingrained happenings in the past.
That's such a good question. I love it.
It is. And from a coaching perspective, what I like to sort of, start or point towards is this whole notion of what is when you describe something as deeply ingrained, right? You're already talking about a subjective truth to you, that it is, for me, it feels very deeply ingrained, right? So some things seem really easy to let go of, right? Like parking spaces, or like, your expectation to have a parking space,
So
right?
much.
Okay, yeah, we can let go of that one for today, right? Boom, it's done, right? But it seems like the more of a personal nature, like that comes closer to our heart, um, seems to be one the harder ones, right? Because for me, there's almost like the more again, thought created, right? Thought being the Play-Doh, that we can create anything that we really want from that. So we're creating this problem that we have to let go of, right? So that's part of it. But the other part is that we also are creating the notion that it's it's a big thing. In other words, like there's there's a future projection based on your memories of what letting go looks like to you. And so part of letting go is letting go of the notion of what you think is going to happen when you actually let go of or take a different position. And I found that in the course I was taking, living more of a guided life, trusting your wisdom more, that I had this notion of what my future would look like if I just followed my sort of my guide inside all the time. Like if I trusted it 100% and just followed it, right? I had all these visions of what my life could be if I did. None of them were really good. Like they were always like, it's like, there was a lot of like people would judge me for being wishy-washy or non-directive. I had all these different visions, right? And I realized, like, why would that even happen? For like,
Well,
it's really,
you were going into a disempowered
yeah,
thinking, right?
yeah,
So I love the question that he asked, and I love the answer that you gave. And I would also add to that, to me, the way I take that question is either like an emotional, something that happened that's weighs emotionally on him, or some conditioning from the past, right? And in that question, I see a little bit of feeling like not knowing how to let go of it, right? Because perhaps is a habitual way of thinking. And
yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, Ken. So in this sense, I would say, first of all, the fact that you see it and notice it and recognize it, you're already on the path to letting go, right? You already see yourself that you're attached, right, to something that you should be letting go of, or that would serve you to let go of. So that's the first thing that I would say. And the second thing is really learning not to judge ourselves for being so attached to it, right? Because the more you judge it and resist it, and the more it's going to persist, right? So you're starting by noticing, and then really be aware that it's there to tell you something about yourself, to point at something that needs to be looked at and perhaps let go of, right? Therefore, don't judge it. Because the moment that you judge it, you're getting into this empowered state again,
Well,
right?
you're hanging on to it some more.
Yeah, you're feeding that energy.
Yeah.
And in this case, trust the fact that by not judging it and just noticing it, and you will figure out the way to let it go, right? Not everything is so simple to let go of. A parking spot is fairly simple to let go of. I mean,
Well,
sometimes it's not, but
because
listen.
you New Yorkers are emotionally attached to your parking spots, right? but but like I just had a thought around, like there's a YouTube video out there of this little kid panicking like crazy in the pool. Like, it's like, like, I'm drowning, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. Until it was either his mom or aunt or something kind of pointed out to the fact that there's only a foot of water there. You can stand,
Mm-hmm.
you can stand up.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
stand up, right? And I just had this little vision. I don't know if anybody's old enough of Kilroy, but we used to draw these cartoons back in the 70s and 60s of just a nose and a guy holding onto the ledge kind of a thing. And the vision of letting go, we think there's a big abyss below us. Like, if I let go, like there's this huge big void of unknown. But in reality, it's amazing to notice that you're on firm ground.
Yeah.
Like, you have everything within you to get through anything. And letting go is really trusting that the ground is, you are grounded. You are there.
You're grounded and you're supported, and you're
Yeah.
not doing it all alone, right?
No.
And that can be a concept that if you don't believe in spirit or God, or, you believe there's just you and this is it, that's a difficult concept to grasp. But if you believe that there's anything beyond us or higher intelligence, then that's where you need to show up to have that relationship with it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's liberating the moment that you realize, okay, the more I think back to this and how powerful it is in keeping me there, or how strong the conditioning is, or how difficult this is for me, and the more I feed that, how difficult it is and how strong this is and how hard it is to let go of it, right?
Yeah.
So let me just look at it, notice that I'm hanging on, and now I can stop judging myself. And the moment that you do that, you freed up so much space in your real estate up here. And now you can come up with, oh, let me look down here. Oh, my
Yeah.
feet are on the ground.
Yeah.
Look at that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can see things through a different lens the moment that you let
Oh,
go of all the things that hold you down. And that's very much a part of what
I
keeps us
know.
there.
I know. In There was an interview with Michael Singer and some other famous guy, Tony Robbins.
Oh, just
Just, yeah,
someone.
yeah, just another guy. Anyways, and it was actually a really good interview. I really liked it because it was it felt really down to earth kind of an interview. Now, Michael Singer is kind of down to earth anyways, and so it was interesting to see, Tony Robbins sort of uh, match the vibration of Michael Singer. And he asked a really poignant question. He said, it's like, how easy is it to let go? And he said, and Michael Singer just said, see this pen? That's how easy it is, right? And because we build up this notion that things are difficult and things are struggling, right? It's a concept that we've come up with through innocent habitual conditioning, right? That life is a struggle and all this kind of, so letting go has to be a struggle. And really you're really kind of like one thought away, one idea away from really just dropping it. It's just seeing things through a different lens. And 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 what I liked about that was, it kind of reminded me again, it's a song, it's like, Jesus take the wheel kind of a thing, right? And there's so and we're looking at a new car, and these cars now have these lane adjusters, so that when you're drifting, it'll automatically adjust the lane.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? Like, after that workshop I did, I am firmly believing that we do have this guide inside that allows you to, when you're aware of it, right, to always be adjusting you, always being adjusting, right? That if you drift away a little bit, and if you're self-aware enough, that you'll go, oh, right, and you just let go of the wheel, which is like, a hard concept when you've had 40 years of driving, that you have to hang on to the steering wheel, but it's literally letting go and then having it adjust, and then you can take over again. Eh?
And
So
and that's the thing. The moment that you let go, right, you experiment with this, right? And I
yeah,
would always suggest starting with small
experiment.
things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Experiment with this.
Yeah.
Now is because you're not so busy hanging on and in all the thinking that, oh my God, I'm so stuck and this is happening again and I'm judging myself. I did it again, right?
Yeah.
Now you can actually notice all the signs that come in your way, all the nudging. You can actually
Yeah.
hear it and see it,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
and act
Yes.
upon it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
And that's the different, like, can I look at this differently? And that's exactly what you're doing, Ken. Is like you're just sort of like taking up the the notion or the idea of, am I really seeing this as it really is? And I find that, like, what am I hanging on to? What am I really, really hanging on to? And and really it's just an illusion. Like, it's just something that I am making up, thinking it's very real, and that that's what's going to happen. And I have no, I really don't know what's the future. you know, I and so that, I think part of letting go is being comfortable with the unknown.
But here is the thing, though. We're always in the unknown. Even when we think that we do know, even
Wait
when
a
we
minute.
think that we're predicting it, we don't
Are you
know.
are you saying that?
Right? You never know 100% what's going to happen, even when you're trying to control it and resist it and try, like, what we do know, that when the more we focus on something and the more that something gets created in our lives, right? We create it. So,
Good or bad? Yes.
right, good or bad. So if you think that you're stuck in a certain situation, that's the way you're always going to be.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's the way
Yeah.
you're always going to be,
Yeah.
right? So the only way to really control the unknown is to create the thinking that you want to see happen and let it just happen in the way that is
It's
best
supposed
for
to.
you, right?
It's supposed
Yes.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I do with the parking spots. I
Yeah.
just basically go with the, I would love to have something closer to where I'm going, but it's sort of like, okay, so where am I going to park today? Surprise
Yeah.
me. Kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? And it's amazing. It's amazing what happens. Um, there was something. There's something about, as we're talking, I'm starting to get more and more of the idea around. There's a ton of crap that we need to let go of. I need to let go
Oh,
of.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, it just seems like it never really ends. Like, because part. I mean, the categories or whatever you want to call it. I mean, part of it is my belief systems. Like the
Of
limiting beliefs,
course. Yeah.
right? There's I don't know how many gazillion of them are out there, right? Um, but just the notion of I can't, or I'm not, or any of those kind of things, those are all beliefs that can easily be let go, right? And as you're saying, like, take something small, like, whatever, right? Let's start a podcast.
Well, you can start with something a little smaller. I missed my yoga class today.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed my yoga class today. I mean, I would have normally been so upset and just like hunking and just
Sure.
sweating because I'm not making it back on time. And now my daughter's not going to get her lunch in school. And now she's going to walk into the middle of it. I was like, okay, I'll just do my yoga class at home. Like, what can I do? I missed it, right? And I still miss my yoga class, but I didn't go through the whole like sweating through 45 shirts and feeling really bad and getting angry and honking, getting in street fights, or driving in the jungle, like I just avoided myself all that pain, right? And that's the other thing to point out. It's not always going to turn into like, a gift from the universe, like sometimes it's just saving you a lot of headaches and a lot of disempowering thoughts,
Well, it's in
right?
some ways,
Emotions.
yeah, and we're not sure on the design anyways, right? Like, I
We're
I
not.
I'm not in charge of the results, right? Like, and regardless of what I think, the world keeps carrying on without me. I don't know if you notice, traffic still goes, everything goes there. The sun rises, the moon does what it does. You know, it rains. Regardless of what I think about all that, right? It still happens. Life still happens, and for me, it was really hard to get into the idea that I could actually manage things more, that I was in
Mhm.
charge. Like, like if it wasn't up to me, it's not going to happen, kind of a deal.
Mhm.
And a lot of things I sort of had to sort of say to myself, it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. you know like, give somebody else a chance. Like, give life a chance to, kind of a thing. Why would you have to be involved in everything? Those kind of notions, right? Were all things that, the more I let go, the more freer I felt to do other things. It just seemed more
To do
natural.
to do what you can control and to do what you want to focus on, right?
Yeah,
Versus trying to control something you have no control over.
yeah.
And
Which is very well. Yeah,
and again, I love the way the book Letting Go by David Hawkins like gives you
mm,
really good tips and tools and ways. He basically always says, like, always ask yourself, is this really true? Right?
yeah.
There's really nothing that you can't let go of, right?
No,
So
no.
when you get caught up in that thinking, when you start feeling the resistance, right? Ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really happening right now in this moment? Right?
Yeah,
Or am I going into the past, or am I projecting into the future? Right? And pretty much 99.9% of the times, we're not in the present. Right?
no, no.
So the moment that you can do that, he also points to the health benefits of doing this, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
all that toxic energy that gets created when you have that resistance inside your body, letting go of that is actually really healthy for your body. So,
100%.
it's a little more like tangible than like a, you know, abstract concept like spirituality, right? It actually is healthy for you to let go of a lot of things in your life and
Yeah.
not be so attached to the way they unfold or happen or, you know, evolve.
I think what you're, I like the what from that book. What you're describing though is because people are often looking at. I can understand. I can see why letting go would be very helpful, but they
Hmm.
also miss the point. It would be very healthy too.
Very healthy. Yeah.
Very healthy, because when you are in touch or more aware of your feelings, right? So for me, you experience life through mostly through your feelings, right? So you have some kind of physiological aspect shows up, and it, and it's usually because you're kind of lost in your thinking. But if you will notice that when the things that you need to sort of let go of, like really look at strongly, and what it's doing connected to your body, like what's happening with your body, right? I'm breathing harder. I've got some heaviness in my chest, or my stomach is really queasy, and kind of a thing. So it's starting to manifest that, right? And the stronger you hold on to it, the more that shows up. And so you've
Hmm.
got all the bad chemicals that are, I'm not going to name them all because I can't remember them all, but they're not the good ones. And so you start this little spiral thing going on, where if you're perpetually in that, right? Like, there's something that you're hanging on to, and and part of that overthinking about that hanging on is causing this physical aspect to show up. And the more you play in it, you know what is disease, right? Is disease is dis-ease, like not being right. So yeah, no, I'm a strong believer in that. Like, and that's my indicator. To me, that's my indicator. Like, is my feeling.
Always.
That's my gauge. If I feel it coming up and going, oh, okay, all right, what is it that I need to usually let go of? right? Because if I hang on to it, it's just going to linger, right? It's just going to linger.
And really looking at, well, what is it that's creating this feeling in my body, this tightness, this block, this not feeling at ease, like you're saying, right?
Yeah,
And then really looking at the feeling underneath that. Okay, well, this is the feeling, and I'm feeling anxious. Okay, what about this makes me feel anxious, right? And just really like digging deep into that to get to the core of what it is. And it's typically one or two things. I'm feeling
yeah,
rejected. I'm not feeling enough. I'm feeling disappointed, because it's always a reflection of ourselves, right? The ego is so big.
well,
It
life is
is.
constantly mirroring back to us.
Yeah,
It's like if your radar is out to pick up the signals, you will notice that it's your what you're thinking is being projected back to you. Like you are getting exactly what you're getting based on your window or whatever, how you want to frame it, right? The um the you know the other aspect of the physiology, and the notion of letting go, there's also a performance aspect of it, because when it creates low moods, right? So if your feelings aren't there, or you're in a low emotional state, you're going to act according to that state, and
absolutely.
your results are going to be poor. So there's
Absolutely.
there's so much the problem is we really don't know the benefit of it, but I tell you, it's a lot better than what you got now.
I mean, listen, your performance is going to be lower, and you're going to attract a whole lot of that, right?
Yes.
Because now you're going to be energetically matched by the same, vibrational events, people, situations, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to keep feeding into that. Again, it goes back to the
It's a
concept
feedback loop.
of, yeah, where you
Yeah.
focus your energy flows,
Yeah.
right? So the more you focus on feeling that way, and also, like the hanging on and holding on, that is an emotional response too, right? Because
Totally.
when you look at that, it's like, what makes me need to hang on for my life, right? And it's when you dig deep into that, then you get your answer. It's always like an insecurity, or a feeling less than, or
Yeah.
feeling rejected, or
Yeah.
like whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you realize there is something that you're holding on to, that you would be better off letting go of, really notice it, don't judge it, and then realize there's some work to be done, and you're already on your way because you're already noticing, right?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm wondering if anybody else has any more comments or questions, or um, knows that. I mean, I don't know anybody that has not come up against the whole notion of letting go. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and 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 how I know personally, it's like for me anyways, I make it more than what it really is. And like in your book, Katie Byron, or Byron Katie, basically says the same thing. It's like, what is it true? Is it true? Right? How do you
Is it
know that
true? Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
true?
I
Right?
mean, it's interesting that you brought her up. This actually ties nicely back into a different concept that I think would be nice to touch upon, because if you look at my audiobook, you
What do
see
you got
who's
there,
next
Steve?
to letting go? That's Byron Katie.
Ah, he's a
uh,
favorite of mine. He's a favorite.
yeah. And she is hard for me to listen to.
Oh, interesting.
She's very hard for me to listen to. I've had this book, I've been working on it for quite some time. I've read a few books in between. She triggers me, right?
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, because she's kind of saying the same things. Is the way in which she says it that triggers me.
Mm,
And so, it'd be interesting for me to get to the bottom of that. But yeah, you're right. The concepts are very similar. But this speaks to, I think it was last week that we were talking about how there's so many people speaking to the same concepts. Is there really a need for everyone to be talking about all this stuff? Yes. Because if Byron Katie was the only person on earth speaking to this, I would be so completely closed off to it. I don't know why for now, right? Maybe in the future that would change.
Yeah.
But picking up the book Letting Go or Synchrodestiny, those books really spoke to me. Like they were an easy read and I really got it because they're each expressing the same concept through their own filters, personalities, right? Through the way they understand it. And I understand it better from one person than the other, right?
Yeah. In that
So
moment, right?
in
And
this
that's
moment where I'm at right now,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. And that's why, people say, well, there's so many books written about this. Well, I even had I won't even go there because it's kind of patronizing myself. But the the idea. Okay, now I started down that path. Okay, um, I'll just let go of that thought for a second.
Like let it go.
But yeah, but I mean, I used to do this workshop in uh, down south in a university, and every couple of years or every year, a couple of times a year, I'd do this workshop, and the room would fill up, and then one guy came down and he says, I've been here before. And I go, yeah, that's great. That's great. And he says, so I'm not going to hear anything new. And I go,
Mm,
well, were you here when I did it? And he says, no, no, never heard you. Well, then how do you know? You know, and this is what I find about books. Even though the books have common themes, if I'm attracted to it for some particular reason, maybe there's something within there, like at my level of understanding on that particular moment, it resonates, right? I can go back to that book 10 years from now or 10 years ago, and I wouldn't have gotten anything out of it. Like it would have
or get a lot out of it in a year from now,
well,
right? Or
true, true.
something different out of
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah, yeah.
So no, it's really, really, really true. I agree. And
Mm.
I think it would be you model that, Dina. The only way to get anyone to do anything is for them to decide to do it. I know
Yeah,
it's probably not what you wanted to hear, but the only way to really help them get the concept is by modeling it and be patient, live by it. You know,
yeah.
just walk the talk, and everyone will follow.
Well,
And that's
it's
very true, right?
yep,
And there's a
yep.
lot of letting go in that. There's a lot of letting
Oh
go
yeah,
of the need for others to get it right away.
yeah.
So,
And the whole notion of be the change that you want to see in others, right? Points to that whole concept of you can't change other people. You can't, right? But you can demonstrate the change that you want to see. You wanted, and I even heard it slightly different. Be the difference you want to see.
mhm.
Be the difference.
And and I would say also, when you have that urge,
Yeah.
which it's interesting that she asked this question because this was the theme of my weekend. When you feel that urge to help or just go and give like advice when it's not warranted or like just want to help someone change, pause and ask yourself, what part of me needs to do this?
Oh, I hate that one. I hate that one. It's like, because
Because it always goes back to us, right?
well, and one of the I kind of twisted it just slightly, but it's like if I am not, like whatever experience I'm having at that moment, it's like it's as soon as you point the fingers, right? And you kind of like there's three of them coming back at you, right? It's like, okay, how am I contributing to this? What
Mm,
what am I doing to feed that?
mm,
Kind of thing. Well, if you see, and also the deeper question is, where in my life does that show up from me?
mhm.
So when you see, when you kind of say like, okay, like that person is really dishonest and you can't be trusted and things like that. The real question is not how to change that. It's the question of, okay, the fact that I could see that happening, is something within me to ask the question, where does mistrust show up in me? Where am I
Or
not?
perhaps where have I experienced this, right?
Yeah,
Because it could be touching upon something that was done to you, or right, like
yeah,
where have I experienced this? Because I think sometimes when you say like, well, where have I, you know, where am I like reflecting this or whatever, which is, it goes back a little bit to Byron Katie.
yes,
I take it that way sometimes. I take it like, well, now you're just pointing the finger at me, which is very much what I'm saying too. It's just, I don't know, somehow it triggers me, right?
yeah,
To me, then I realized, well, it's not so much that I've been dishonest as perhaps maybe I've been betrayed, or dishonesty was a part of my life and it's a trigger, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's the way at least I hear that. But yeah, it's such a good, it's always going back to ourselves. Where do I need to do this, right? I felt this need. I felt this very deep need this weekend to do that to a couple people at a party.
yeah,
In trying to help them, I just really felt like I wanted to help them.
yeah.
And then I was like, oh, maybe I went a little bit deeper than this person was, ready
Prepare.
for at a
Yeah,
Thanksgiving dinner party, right?
yeah,
And what part of me felt so eager to just really like pin her down,
yeah,
to help her. I want to help you because I felt like I really want to help you. You can do this. You're just talking yourself out of things. And then I really had to sit with that thought the next day. I was like, I felt like I was really helping her. And I think to a degree I was. But then at some point, it felt like she was checking out, right?
yeah,
Which is, there's a very big difference between coaching someone that comes to you because they want to be coached and you offering up all your advice.
yes,
So I
yes,
did that.
yeah.
And, I didn't really feel bad about it, but, initially I did. And I was like, no, go away. I'm not going to feel bad about it. What am I learning from this? What can
Well,
I do instead next time? Right?
and yeah, and that's an important lesson right there. And and one of the things that people will come to me and they'll say, I don't like that person's behavior and whatever and all that other kind of stuff. And there's a couple of things there. One, the whole concept that Carl Jung talked about with the shadow. I don't know if you're familiar with any shadow work, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you can recognize anything is because it's in you, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
and it's this like, so you recognize anger is because it's in you. Anger's in you. You recognize a tree because the tree's in you. Like it's there, right? It's always there. So you're always living from your memory. The other thing is that everybody is doing the best they can given the thinking they have at the moment,
Yeah.
right? So at the
Yeah.
at the level of their understanding, this is what they see the world being, and they're acting accordingly to that, right?
And,
And
and I would say the level of understanding changes based on all the business in there too, for
the
each one
mi-
of
the
us,
minute the
right?
minute you let go, of some of those, not like you cannot, like, once an elastic is stretched, it never goes back to its same, right? So part of that is stretching into the whatever metaphor you want to use, because I like the first one where I let go of the elastic band and it launches me, kind of a thing. Because that's what actually happens for me. That's what
Mhm.
happens, like, so part of that is is sort of knowing the difference between what is good for you in your head, ego based, not so good, okay, and then what is really coming through as intuition and wisdom, which is really guiding you forward in a path. One is holding you back, and one is pushing, is literally moving you forward.
Mhm.
And there's a feeling between the two of them, like I can feel when I'm being held back, because it doesn't feel good. It feels ugly. It feels like nervousness. It feels like being overwhelmed. It feels so many different things. But the other one is so much gentler, and the minute I sort of like, okay, I'm just going to let go of that and let it drift away, just, it just sort of like, whew, you know
Yeah.
I'm not going to launch into the Frozen song, but it just it just seems like
I
you just
mean, there's
I mean
so much more
that,
ease to the, this way of doing things, but I understand it's not a natural way of being. Let's just
oh,
be
that's
honest
the
about
key.
it.
I think that's
Okay.
the key,
It's
right?
not natural. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to also maybe give some tips around, well, how can I get started on this, like letting go? Right?
Okay.
How can I surrender? Right? And I think, like all things, small steps. The smallest steps you take, for as long as it's going to take. Maybe you need to take those small steps for a long time until that small step becomes automated, right? I drop my coffee instead of getting all worked up and, like, angry with myself. Now I wasted my coffee. Just let it go. Let go of all the thinking. Just clean it up and move on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's something that we can all work towards, right? Something small like that, whatever it is for you, right? That
Yeah.
you are so stuck on and you're not letting yourself off the hook or whatever it is. Pick the tiniest thing that you can let go of. That does two things:
Yeah.
works your muscle towards that behavior. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how big the thing that you're letting go of is about really creating a habit around behaving that way and thinking that way. So you can start with something that you are not so attached to, right? Now you're creating in your brain the pathway to that behavior, right? Once that's automated, then you can increase what you let go of, right? So that's one thing that it does, which is huge. Every habit gets created that way. The second thing is you're collecting victories for yourself. So it gives you the motivation to keep doing it,
Yeah. You're
right?
leveling up.
So, yeah, small victory, you collect small victories after small victories, and you now have the confidence, right? So it's habit, confidence, motivation, and confidence, right? Those three things are crucial to changing anything about ourselves.
Yeah.
Now you're on a way to really growing this habit into, other things, greater things, really getting how it works, and also collecting the evidence for yourself that this works, because
Yeah.
you're going to be more at ease and things are going to flow in your life much easier. And I think that's a really good way to start, right? Start small, accumulate these victories, and make it a habit to live this way.
Yeah. And it and I think there's and I love those tips. And one thing I'd love to add, and I will add,
Absolutely, go ahead.
sure, but is to go like it is. I love the notion of going of starting small and exploring, right? Like test it out. Don't believe everything we test it out for yourself, right? The other thing is is even if you don't beat yourself up over that. Like go light. Like the fact that you notice that you have something to hang on to is great, right? And it's your choice. Like if you don't want to or do want to, whatever. Like, but if you don't, there's so like, oh, there's so we have this whole tendency to be really heavy on ourselves. Be light, like like just you know, um, it's like, oh, there I go again, kind of a thing. There I go, hanging on to whatever, right? And I think part of the healing process is that we should stop taking ourselves so seriously all the time,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, the whole world is so serious as it is. Like why would we want to add any more heaviness to it? And so yeah, feel free to explore, test things out. Like this whole notion of being here is about experimenting, right? And like what Monica's saying, be kind and largely to ourselves. I we're so easy to be kind to others. Yeah.
That's the name of the game, my friend.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I would add to finish the concept of starting small is, like, don't go with the biggest challenge you have,
Oh,
because then
wait a
you're
minute.
going to scare yourself away, right? You don't want to
Yeah,
surrender immediately, like something that you have so much to lose over, right?
well, and that's it, right? I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna do. It's like no, 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 no. We're not suggesting that, right? Like Who knows, right? So yeah,
Thank you, Ken.
yeah, and yeah, thanks
Hold,
everybody for.
hold on. I'm going to do my thing again.
What are you gonna do? Oh, here
It's
we go.
just, I
What?
don't, it felt a little suffocating to me to be behind with that
Yeah,
white, whatever that was, the, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. So there you go, folks. A New York sunset for you. No, this has really been good. Thank you very much. It just highlights. It's a big, huge topic because there's so many. Everything that we do is really about: do I hang on to it or do I let it go? Is it really that important or is it not? Right? Is it true or true not? Whatever it is that you want. But like you were saying, explore, experience, take yourself lightly. Don't be so serious. Um, yeah, yeah.
An experiment and collect your own evidence,
Well,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, get the evidence that supports you, right?
it's
I
good
mean,
enough for
that's
you, right?
that's part of. There's the biggest one, right? We talk about the baggage that we're carrying, right? Right. There you go, folks. Here's a bag of evidence to support why my life does not work. Okay, I'm gonna let it go. Like there's nothing there. There's really nothing there. Okay. Anyways, so stay tuned. We'll pick a topic sometime this week,
Or
and
suggest a topic.
or
If you have
yeah,
a
if somebody
topic,
yeah,
yeah.
comment down in our chat functions on our website there. Hashtag
Thank you, Monica.
well, and uh, yeah, we're always open for suggestions where anybody wants to explore. This is a very organic. We don't really plan very much other than we came up with a topic and we said let's talk about it.
I love the topic that came up around how to, around the frustration of others in our lives not changing and not being in this. That's a really big topic, isn't it?
How to deal with others.
How do we change everybody else?
Yeah,
Start with yourself.
that would be a good one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We can, yes, you can go to hashtag Wednesday Wellness Show, the Facebook page, and as soon as this recording's over, you'll be able to start at the beginning. The recording will be there on that website, on that page itself. You'll
as
find it
well as the other episodes,
as
right?
long as the other episodes. Yes, this is number. Where are we?
5, right?
Five.
I think so.
High five! High five!
Hold on. How do we do this?
Excellent, excellent. All righty. Well, we'll wrap it up. And thanks everybody for showing up, and thanks everybody for interacting. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. And
Thank you, Ken. Good to see you here.
yeah, yeah. No, I love the
Thank you,
comments.
Monica
Thank you, Monica
and Adina.
and Adina and a few others that are hiding in the corner. Oh yeah, there we go. Yes, good to see you again, Angela. Yeah.
Hi, Angela.
All right, folks. Thank you. We'll see you soon, Fatih.
Sounds good. See you
All
next
right.
week. More
Okay.
stories for you.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, and yeah, I want to know more about these parking spots. Anyways.
I'll tell you how many I get next week.
All righty. Cheers.